From the moment the humid June air clung to my skin and the country club chandeliers cast a warm, golden glow over the assembled crowd, I sensed that nothing would ever be the same again. I still remember the moment vividly, as if it were seared into my memory. We were gathered at the historic club in our small South Carolina town to celebrate our daughter Lila's college graduation. Amid the clinking of glasses and murmurs of pride, my husband Victor stepped up to deliver what I would later recognize as the most devastating announcement of my life. As Lila's graduation toast began, Victor's voice boomed across the room. "Ophelia, I'm leaving," he declared, his tone shockingly calm and unforgiving. The words sliced through the air like a razor, halting conversation and freezing the clink of glasses midair. I stood rooted to the spot, my heart pounding furiously as every guest turned toward him in disbelief. In that single, cruel moment, he stripped away 25 years of a life we had built together. I built our life on trust, and he shattered it with a single toast. For years, I had devoted myself to our family and to nurturing dreams that were quietly placed on hold, dreams like opening a community art center to enrich our town's soul. I sacrificed my ambitions, believing that our love and commitment would always be enough. Yet here, under the glare of every inquisitive eye, Victor's charismatic facade dissolved into the cold reality of betrayal. His reckless entrepreneurial spirit, once thrilling to me, now appeared as nothing more than a guise for his irresponsible ventures and hidden transgressions. With trembling hands, I reached into the inner pocket of my fitted dress and withdrew a pristine, sealed envelope, one I had prepared long ago in secret. It was not merely paper and ink. It was a promise of independence and an assurance that I would reclaim the future he had recklessly jeopardized. Walking toward him with an unexpected calm that belied the chaos within me, I extended my hand and pressed the envelope into his grasp. For a brief, suspended second, his smug smile wavered as he broke the seal, and I saw a flash of uncertainty in his eyes. But his moment of vulnerability was swiftly replaced by enraged indignation. "Ophelia, what is this?" he bellowed, his voice rising as harshly as the summer heat outside. I observed the scene in a surreal haze. The warm, humid air mixed with the heavy scent of magnolia and betrayal as every eye in the room fixed upon us. I could sense the unspoken shock drifting among the guests like a dense fog. Lila's face, still radiant with the hope of new beginnings, now contorted with confusion and heartbreak. In that overwhelming moment, memories of our life together cascaded before my eyes. Quiet mornings spent planning our modest future, shared dreams and whispered promises, and the sacrifices I had made so selflessly. All of it now seemed like distant echoes, shattered by Victor's callous declaration. Even as despair threatened to overwhelm me, a quiet resolve began to take root. I knew that I could no longer allow my identity to be defined by his reckless choices. I recalled the subtle hints I had noticed in recent months. Late-night phone calls that ended abruptly, lavish gifts suddenly exchanged for secret smiles, and murmurs among our friends about a mysterious young woman named Elise. At first, I had clung to the hope that these were mere aberrations, flashes of impulsiveness that would soon pass. But now the truth was undeniable. Victor had been hiding a web of deceit. His hidden accounts and extravagant expenditures were not invested in our future, but squandered on a life I had been blind to, a life shared with Elise, supported by the same mutual friends who had once vouched for the integrity of our union. Putting the envelope aside was only the beginning. I felt an inner stirring, a determination to piece together every lie, every omitted detail of our shared life that now lay in tatters. I slipped away from the center of the stunned celebration, smoothly disengaging from the crowd as though my departure were part of the event's natural progression. Lila, caught in the emotional crossfire, looked to me for solace, and I managed only a small, enigmatic smile, a promise that I would soon find answers, that I would not be swallowed by this betrayal. I found refuge in a quiet alcove near a window that overlooked the manicured gardens of the club. As I sat there, cradling my thoughts like fragile treasures, my mind replayed the years I had devoted to our family. I remembered the sacrifices of quiet nights spent dreaming of a community art center that could restore beauty to our town, a dream that had slowly died under the weight of compromise and unfulfilled promises. Now, Victor's callous outburst had lit a spark within me. The pain of his betrayal was interlaced with the dawning realization that I was meant for more. I resolved, in the silence of that moment, to uncover every hidden account, every secret transaction, every lavish gift that he had so shamelessly bestowed on Elise. My investigation would be the first step toward reclaiming not just my financial stability, but my very self-respect. It was then that the murmurs of the crowd began to swell into an unstoppable tide. I knew the whispers would soon become rumors, and the town's small streets would buzz with the scandal of Victor's disgrace. Yet, I felt steady, anchored by an inner strength I had scarcely recognized before now. I had spent too many years defined by sacrifice and fear. Now, a new chapter was closing on that life, and I would write the next one with every ounce of determination I had reclaimed. As I rose from my secluded spot, the echo of laughter and sympathetic looks filled the room, the festive veneer of the celebration now irrevocably marred by the taste of betrayal. I moved gracefully toward the exit, my steps measured and resolute. The envelope clutched close to my heart was a silent vow, a promise that I would navigate the storm ahead with dignity, even as the foundation of my marriage crumbled behind me. Just as I reached the entrance, a sudden commotion shattered the fragile calm of my departure. I froze as I heard the rapid, panicked footsteps behind me. Glancing over my shoulder, I saw Victor barreling toward me with a wild desperation in his eyes. His voice, now raw and frantic, tore through the cool evening air. "What is in that envelope, Ophelia? What secrets have you dared to unleash?" he screamed, his tone a mixture of venom and panic. For a heartbeat, time stood still on that moonlit pavement. In that charged moment, I felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with resolve. I clutched the envelope tighter, aware that the contents within it were not only the key to his deception but also the first step toward my redemption. Victor's anguished cries faded into the distance as he chased after me, his silhouette a frantic blur against the dim light of the historic town. As I stepped further into the darkness, the cool night air wrapped around me like a protective cloak, and I knew, with both terror and exhilaration, that this was only the beginning. My future, once dictated by betrayal and sorrow, was now mine to reclaim, and every secret I uncovered would fortify my path to a new life of resilience and strength. And so, with tears drying on my cheeks and determination igniting within my soul, I disappeared into the night, the envelope and its untold contents promising vengeance, healing, and ultimately, the redemption I so desperately sought. Victor's furious shouts still echoed in my ears as I sped away from the country club. The night air, cool against my flushed skin, did little to soothe the burning pain of his betrayal. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. Outside, under the dim glow of a solitary street lamp near the club's entrance, Victor had cornered me. His voice, trembling with rage, had demanded, "What secrets have you dared to unleash?" as he lunged forward, desperate to snatch the envelope from my hand. I had offered no answer, a silent vow etched in every line of my face, and had driven away, leaving him shouting in the darkness behind me. In that moment, I knew my life was irrevocably altered. The drive home felt interminable. I watched the world pass by in a blur through fogged glass, each sign and shadow a reminder of the life I had once known. My mind replayed the scene over and over. The cold announcement of our daughter Lila's celebration turned tragic by Victor's callous declaration, the stunned silence of the guests, and the envelope I had so carefully prepared. I had built our life on trust, and he shattered it with a single toast. The thought of our 25 years together, filled with moments of joy and countless sacrifices, now twisted into a cruel dance of deceit and ambition, left me numb yet burning with determination. Arriving at my modest family home, a quaint two-story house filled with cherished memories and remnants of dreams once nurtured, I exhaled deeply and stepped into the sanctuary that had long been a refuge from the storms of life. The creak of our old porch swing echoed in the stillness of the night as I closed the door behind me, shutting out the chaos that had spilled over from the world outside. Every familiar detail, from the fraying welcome mat to the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, offered me a momentary solace, even as the weight of Victor's betrayal pressed heavily on my heart. I made my way directly to my cluttered art studio, a room that had once been my haven of creativity, where half-finished canvases leaned against the walls and the sharp tang of turpentine mixed with memories of vibrant possibility. Tonight, however, the studio reeked of regret and unfulfilled promise. I had sacrificed my dream of opening a community art center to support our family, believing that my own ambitions were secondary to the love we had shared. Now, as I stood among the scattered brushes and palettes, I felt both the sting of betrayal and the first flickers of a long-forgotten resolve. Determined to uncover the full extent of Victor's deceit, I began rummaging through our studies and filing cabinets. I had noticed subtle hints in the past: overdue bills mysteriously paid for by unknown funds, receipts for luxury items that I knew we could never afford, and vague conversations among our mutual friends. Tonight, I found a small stack of unopened mail tucked away in a drawer, the envelope's paper pristine and untouched by time. With trembling fingers, I unfolded a bank statement that had inadvertently slipped through the papers. I gasped as I scanned its contents, a hidden bank account that was not part of our joint finances. The statement detailed lavish purchases, a designer necklace shimmering with the promise of indulgence, and recent trips to Charleston, a city known for its upscale charm, none of which had ever been budgeted for our modest life. My heart pounded as I read each entry. A bank statement slipped from my shaking hands, revealing a truth colder than the night air. I thought I knew every stroke of our life's canvas, but he painted a betrayal I never saw coming. How could the man I had trusted with my entire being have orchestrated such an elaborate deception? My mind raced with questions as fragments of conversations and hushed whispers came back to me. Late-night phone calls, secretive smiles exchanged with a younger woman whose name I had only heard in passing, Elise. The name, now burning on my tongue, was a verdict that confirmed my worst suspicions. The quiet of the house was suddenly broken by the sound of soft footsteps. I turned to see Lila standing in the doorway. At 22, her eyes were still bright with the hope of new beginnings, yet now they bore a deep sadness and confusion. "Mom, what's happening?" she asked softly, her voice trembling as though each word held the weight of the world. I hesitated for a moment, struggling to find a balance between shielding her from the raw pain and sharing enough truth to forge a path forward together. "I'm beginning to understand that things were never as they seemed," I replied, my voice quiet but resolute. "There are pieces of our life that you don't even realize have been painted with deceit." Lila stepped closer, her expression a mixture of sorrow and anger. "Dad's been lying to us," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "I always suspected something was off, especially when I saw him with someone at his office. I thought I knew him, but now I see he's been hiding so much." Her words resonated with a painful clarity, each syllable affirming the dread that had been festering inside me. Together, we sat on the worn sofa in our living room, where old family photos bore witness to happier times. In that moment of shared vulnerability, Lila's hurt became a mirror reflecting my own shattered trust, but it also sparked in me a fire of determination. I promised her silently that I would uncover every lie, every hidden secret, so that we might reclaim whatever dignity remained. After Lila left to call a close friend for support, I returned to my investigation with a steely resolve. I sifted through more correspondence and financial records, piecing together the clandestine puzzle of Victor's double life. Each new document deepened my resolve. There were receipts for extravagant meals at restaurants I had never heard him mention, invoices for car rentals on impromptu trips, and further entries in the mysterious account that pointed to recurring payments to a boutique jeweler, payments that could only be for gifts too lavish for our everyday existence. The evidence was mounting, and it painted a damning picture of a man who had degraded everything we had built together for a fling with Elise. I sat at my antique writing desk, the soft rustle of paper and the gentle scratching of my pen mingling with the distant hum of the night. As I catalogued each piece of evidence, I could almost see the reckless swirls of Victor's lies forming a grotesque masterpiece on my table. I felt a bittersweet mix of sorrow and liberation. Though betrayal stung like salt on an open wound, it also set me free from the shackles of denial. I knew that only by facing the truth head-on could I begin to heal and rebuild. Minutes turned into hours as I lost myself in the careful examination of transactions and dates. The enormity of Victor's deception began to take shape. His financial infidelities were not hasty mistakes, but deliberate acts to fund a secret new life. My heart ached with each revelation, but within that pain, I also discovered a wellspring of empowerment. This investigation was not merely about exposing his misdeeds. It was about reclaiming my own narrative, about rediscovering the woman I had set aside for the sake of our family. I paused to gather my thoughts when a faint, disruptive sound drifted from a hallway, a sound I recognized all too well. I inched towards the door, my pulse quickening as I listened. It was Victor. His voice, low and tense, floated from a room down the hall. Uncertain, I crept closer until I could make out snippets of his conversation. His tone was conspiratorial as he spoke into his phone. "Yes, Elise. Everything is in motion. We meet tomorrow at the safe house," he murmured, and then he added, almost as an afterthought, "This is our new life, free from all the ties that bind." I froze. Every nerve in my body screamed in alarm at his words. A chill raced down my spine as I realized that my private investigation had uncovered only the beginning of his plan, a plan that involved meeting someone, perhaps to finalize a new chapter away from the life we had shared. The implications were staggering. What arrangements had he made? Who was this Elise truly, and what was the safe house he mentioned? The steady clatter of my heart and the soft sigh of the wind through the window became the only sounds in that long, agonizing moment. I felt as if I were standing at the edge of a precipice, the weight of 1,000 hidden truths pulling me into an uncertain abyss. My hands shook uncontrollably as I clutched the faded bank statement once more, its inked numbers and dates now a testament to a betrayal far deeper than I had ever imagined. In that frozen silence, I resolved that I would not allow Victor's reckless deception to destroy what remained of our family's honor. I would gather every scrap of evidence, uncover every secret transaction, and expose the man who had thought he could abandon our life without consequence. The path ahead was dark and perilous, yet I stepped forward with an unwavering determination fueled by the pain and hope that now defined me. Then, as if summoned by my own resolve, I heard Victor's voice again, this time bolder and dripping with venom. "Tomorrow, Elise," he hissed. "We close the deal. There's no turning back now." His final words sent my blood cold, and I realized that the dangerous meeting he referenced was imminent. I pressed my ear to the wall, the sound of his conversation fading in and out, leaving me with a dreadful certainty that the truth was far more twisted than I had ever imagined. With the weight of impending confrontation and the future of our once shared life hanging precariously in the balance, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. My heart still pounded from the shock of Victor's ruthless announcement and his desperate scramble to silence me as I fled the country club. In the cold afterglow of that tumultuous night, I resolved that I would not let his lies and betrayals remain hidden. Determined to expose every deceitful detail, I decided to follow him to the secret meeting with Elise. I rose early the next morning, almost before dawn, my mind a frantic canvas painted with vivid images of betrayal and hopeful resolve. I slipped out of our modest family home, careful not to alert anyone to my intentions. The cobblestone streets of our historic town buzzed with the soft murmur of early risers and the gentle rustling of leaves in the warm South Carolina morning. My footsteps, though light, carried the weight of a woman on a mission to reclaim the artistry of my life that had been marred by Victor's reckless abandon. I recalled with painful clarity the shattering moment at Lila's graduation when Victor, in front of an astonished crowd, had declared his intention to leave. Our 25 years together, the dreams I had set aside to nurture a community art center, all seemed to disintegrate with that single, icy toast. Holding tight to the sealed envelope, a silent promise of retribution, I swore to myself then that every hidden secret of his new life with Elise would be brought into the light. The town became my canvas, and every brushstroke would reveal his lies. I whispered in a moment of quiet defiance as I set out along winding streets and hidden alleys known to only a lifelong resident. My first destination was a small, time-worn cafe tucked away on a narrow side street, a cherished sanctuary for local artists and dreamers. There, I sought out Margaret, a dear friend whose paint-stained hands and kind eyes had witnessed the ups and downs of our creative journeys. I found her at a corner table, quietly sketching ideas on rough paper. "Margaret," I said softly upon reaching her, "I need your help. I've discovered that Victor has been living a lie, and I must uncover every last deceit." Without hesitation, her eyes widened with sympathetic understanding, and she squeezed my hand. "We will not let him escape accountability," she declared firmly. In that quiet haven of art and shared memories, a spark of rebellion was lit, a collective courage that would soon ripple throughout our community. Margaret immediately set in motion a plan to rally our neighbors. We walked together toward the town square, where the cobblestone streets were already coming alive with the chatter of early morning commerce. The familiar faces of longtime friends and acquaintances now watched me with subtle looks of concern and recognition, as if the whispers about Victor's misdeeds had finally taken shape in the light of day. I could feel the pulse of solidarity among our people, a quiet but steady current of support that filled me with both hope and renewed resolve. Before long, Lila, our 22-year-old daughter who had been reeling from the previous night's events, joined us in the square. Her eyes, though pained by the betrayal, burned with the same fierce determination that I now felt. "Mom," she said as we embraced tightly, "I'm tired of living in his shadow. I want to help you expose every hidden lie he's crafted." In that moment, our shared grief fused with a promise of retribution. We huddled together on a bench beneath an ancient oak, and between hushed words and determined glances, we began to form a plan, a public display of art and truth designed to shake the very foundations of Victor's carefully constructed world. As our conversation unfolded, memories of my own artistic dreams flooded back. I had once envisioned a community art center that would celebrate creativity and honesty, a sanctuary for expression that would transform our drab corners into vibrant canvases of hope. Now, with Victor's treachery laying waste to our lives, I resolved to use my art as a weapon against deceit. Every brushstroke, every carefully chosen color would become an indictment of his betrayal. I surmised that the upcoming town fair would be the perfect stage, a chance to expose his financial fraud and the sham of his new life with Elise in a public, undeniable display. With our resolve steeled by shared determination, I set out to trace Victor's steps further. I knew from whispered rumors and fragments of overheard conversations that he planned to meet Elise in a secluded spot, a hidden oak grove on the outskirts of town that was perpetually shrouded in a silvery morning mist. Carrying my phone and a small notebook to record every detail, I moved cautiously through narrow lanes. The architecture of our small town, with its mix of old brick buildings and ornamental lampposts, became the backdrop against which my quest for truth unfolded. Slowly, I approached the designated area. The secluded oak grove, with its towering trees and soft ground blanketed in fallen leaves, seemed almost otherworldly in the muted light of early day. I took cover behind a thick clump of ferns, my breath held tight in my chest, and waited. My pulse thundered in my ears as I watched for any sign of Victor's arrival. It didn't take long. Emerging from a swirl of fog came his familiar figure, his tall silhouette moving with determined haste, as if he had no idea that I was tracking him. Beside him, a second figure soon appeared, unmistakably elegant and youthful. It was Elise. Their conversation was hushed, their words laced with schemes for a new life. I strained to catch fragments of their dialogue, the promise of a fresh start, plans for further clandestine meetings, and every word confirmed the depths of their treason. Despite the chill crawling up my spine at the sight of them together, I forced myself to remain calm. I scribbled notes furiously, every detail etched into my notebook forming part of an undeniable record. I knew that this evidence was critical, the truth of his financial deceit, the lavish expenditures on gifts for Elise, and now this surreptitious meeting were the pieces of a puzzle that, once assembled, would unmask him completely. The gravity of the moment pressed on me like a brush laden with dark oil. I could feel the tremendous stakes. The future of my family, my dignity, and the honor of our community hung in the balance. Returning to the town square later that morning, I convened with Margaret and Lila. Together, we refined our plans for the community art event, a rallying display that would not only document Victor's innumerable betrayals, but also galvanize public opinion against him. We envisioned sprawling murals on the walls of the square, installations crafted from reclaimed materials, and digital projections that would tell our story in stark, impossible-to-ignore detail. Every element of our plan was infused with the spirit of resistance. I felt an empowering surge as I thought. The town became my canvas, and every brushstroke would reveal his lies. Yet, as our plans began to crystallize into a tangible force of justice, an ominous message came through that shattered our momentary calm. While reviewing the scant notes I had gathered from the grove, my phone buzzed with an urgent message. The word, warning, flashing on the screen accompanied by terse instructions to exercise caution. The note was anonymous, but its message was clear. Victor was aware, or at least suspicious, of someone moving against him. The chill that followed was deeper than any I had experienced that day. I exchanged worried glances with Lila and Margaret. Our community event, our planned display of truth, now carried an even greater urgency and, potentially, even greater danger. The sense of peril deepened when, as dusk began to settle, I stealthily eavesdropped on the muffled sounds of conversation coming from behind a cluster of magnolia trees near the square's edge. I heard voices, one gruff and determined, the other smooth yet laced with malicious glee. I realized with a sinking heart that Victor and Elise had noticed the stirrings of resistance and were hatching a counterplan of their own. Their hushed tones spoke of closing the deal and of moves that would ensure their deception remained unchallenged. I clutched my notebook tighter, every word they uttered chiseling away at the fragile barrier of hope I had built. A heavy dread settled within me as I slowly backed away, knowing that our growing support had not gone unnoticed. In that fleeting moment, I understood that the battle between truth and treachery had escalated into a dangerous game, a contest not only for our family's honor, but for control over the narrative of our entire town. The vibrant hues of our planned art event now shimmered with the intensity of a revolution waiting to erupt, while the looming threat of Victor's countermove cast long, sinister shadows over everything. I stood there in the twilight, heart pounding and resolve hardening like tempered steel. My mind raced with an avalanche of questions. How far would Victor go to preserve his false new life? What would be the cost if his countermove succeeded? And most importantly, could we muster enough collective strength to expose the truth and reclaim the canvas of our destiny? As I contemplated these thoughts, the silhouettes of Victor and Elise emerged more distinctly from the mist, a final, chilling reminder that the next move in this dangerous chess game was imminent. It was in that heart-stopping moment that I realized our confrontation was approaching rapidly. With the town rallying behind us and every secret I had painstakingly collected ready to be unveiled, I prepared for what could be the decisive battle between truth and deceit. But as I listened intently, I heard Victor's cold, determined voice murmur, "They think they can stop us, but we will not be outmaneuvered." Those words, laced with venom and finality, confirmed my worst fears. Victor and Elise had noticed our growing support and were now planning a countermove that could upend everything. My pulse hammered in my ears as I retreated into the gathering shadows of the town square, the looming specter of their next act hanging thickly in the air. I knew that our fight had only just begun, and that the next chapter of this bitter struggle would challenge every ounce of courage within me. The town square glowed with a soft brilliance that evening, the string lights swaying gently in the warm South Carolina air as twilight deepened into night. Murals, bursting with bold hues and intricate designs, were emblazoned on every available wall, each stroke of paint a deliberate declaration of truth. My art had become a mirror, reflecting his lies for all to see. Neighbors, shopkeepers, and longtime friends gathered with an air of cautious expectancy, their murmurs merging with the soft music that played in the background. I stood before my greatest creation, a sweeping mural that stretched along the side of the old civic building, which depicted a shattered family portrait interwoven with images of financial records and fragmented dreams. Every color and contour of that mural exposed the hidden bank accounts, the lavish expenditures, and every secret gift Victor had showered Elise with. Standing there, I felt both the blaze of triumph and the sting of heartache. Even as I absorbed the palpable energy of the crowd, my mind replayed the agony of yesterday, the piercing moment at Lila's graduation when Victor had abandoned our vow before everyone's eyes. That betrayal had cut deeper than I ever imagined, and yet it also forged in me a steely resolve. I recalled the countless nights hunched over hidden bank statements and whispered suspicions, the moments when I discovered transactions that paid for designer jewelry and impromptu trips to Charleston. All those fragments of deceit had coalesced, forming a damning mosaic of his double life. With every brushstroke on the mural that night, I turned my pain into purpose. As I whispered to myself, my art became a mirror, reflecting his lies for all to see. A surge of determination welled up within me, a pledge to ensure that his betrayal would never again remain concealed in the shadows. Yet even amidst the vibrant display of resistance, I sensed an undercurrent of unrest. From the periphery of the square, I spied movements that did not belong to the supportive crowd. Shrewd eyes caught sight of Victor and Elise slipping among the gathered onlookers with furtive glances and hurried whispers. Their presence was a dark blot on an otherwise luminous evening. I watched, heart in throat, as Victor's features convulsed into fury. His eyes, once full of arrogant confidence, now darted about with a predatory intensity. It wasn't long before I noticed one of his cronies tampering with the projector set up to showcase digital evidence of his misdeeds. The screen, which moments ago had displayed incriminating images, a series of bank statements and snapshots of secret meetings, flickered and stuttered as someone discreetly unhooked a cable. The murmurs of the crowd grew into a low, uneasy hum, as quietly as a symphony of discontent. In the midst of this chaos, I knew that the integrity of our community event was at risk. I could not allow Victor and Elise to erase the truth with such petty sabotage. With measured steps, I moved to confront the disturbance. Lila, her eyes burning with unshed tears and raw fury, fell into step beside me. We approached the group of conspirators just as one hushed voice escalated into a heated argument. Standing face to face with Elise, a woman whose carefully maintained poise now faltered under the weight of public scrutiny, I found myself trembling with a mix of anger and resolve. "How long will you hide behind our lies?" Lila demanded, her voice tremulous yet resolute, as she confronted Elise in front of the assembled crowd. The intensity in Lila's eyes silenced the dissenting whispers. For a long moment, the square held its breath. Elise's facade wavered, and her eyes darted around nervously. The confrontation was electric, a raw, unfiltered moment in which our private torment spilled into the public domain. The mural behind us, luminous and defiant, bore witness to our anguish and our unyielding determination to reclaim our truth. While the tension in the square mounted, I felt the unrelenting need to secure a firmer footing in this battle. After swiftly restoring order with the help of several town elders who supported our cause, I excused myself to the back office of a small law firm near the square. The modest office, filled with the scent of old books and fresh ink, was a sanctuary of logic amid the chaos. There, Mr. Jefferson, a local attorney known for his uncompromising commitment to justice, listened intently as I laid out every detail of Victor's financial schemes. I handed him copies of scanned bank statements, photographic evidence of secret transactions, and my detailed notes gathered from that fateful secret meeting in the Grove. His eyes narrowed thoughtfully as he assured me, "We will build a case that leaves no room for your lies." His calm confidence bolstered my spirits, and for the first time since Victor's announcement, I felt a tangible hope that justice was within reach. Back in the town square, the atmosphere slowly shifted from one of communal shock to a dynamic celebration of truth. The art installations, crafted from reclaimed wood and repurposed materials, began to spark conversation and ignite the passions of everyone present. Murals revealed every sordid detail, the extravagant gifts, the stolen funds funneled into secret accounts, and even the stolen trust of a family broken by deceit. The event wasn't merely a protest. It was a proclamation of resilience, a demonstration that truth, no matter how bitter, was a force that could not be suppressed. Then, as the event reached its pinnacle and the buzz of triumphant energy seemed to drown out even the most determined murmurs of dissent, my phone vibrated with an incoming message. I pulled it out cautiously. The message, terse and laden with menace, read, "They think they can stop us, but we will not be outmaneuvered." A chill ran through me at his cold declaration, a final warning that Victor and Elise had not yet exhausted their options. The stark text was a reminder that while we had exposed much, the battle was far from over. I stepped outside for a moment, away from the jubilant yet tense crowd, to gather my thoughts. The cool night air was punctuated by the distant hum of the town and the occasional exclamation of support for our cause. I recognized that the community's solidarity was our greatest strength, but I also knew our victory depended on confronting the imminent threat head-on. My mind raced as I recalled every detail of the day's events, the sabotage, Lila's confrontation that had forced Elise's mask to slip, and my own legal consultation with Mr. Jefferson. Each fragment of the day was a building block in the fortress of truth we were constructing against Victor's reign of lies. The emotional energy of the art event gave way to a new determination as I resolved to prepare for what lay ahead. I called Lila over, and we found a quiet corner behind a set of ornate benches in the square. Her voice, though still shaking with suppressed rage, took on a steadier tone as she said, "Mom, whatever he plans next, we're ready. We have the evidence, the support, and now a legal strategy. I won't let him hurt us anymore." We embraced briefly, drawing strength from our shared pain and forthcoming resilience. In that moment, I felt the weight of my 25 years of sacrifice and betrayal lift ever so slightly, replaced by the fierce promise of retribution. Determined not to let fear dictate our future, I composed a brief message to Mr. Jefferson summarizing our next steps, and then I returned to the square to oversee the final adjustments to our public display. Just as I began to regain a sense of order amidst the lingering turmoil, my phone buzzed again, a different alert this time. I hesitated, then read the message. "You have made a grave mistake. Prepare for what comes next." My blood ran cold. The message was unmistakably from Victor, a stark, threat-laden warning that his desperation was about to escalate into a final, dangerous move. My heart pounded, and 1,000 questions roiled in my mind. What exactly was he planning? How far would he go to salvage his fractured facade? All around me, the night pulsed with the energy of defiance and unity, yet the dark cloud of Victor's threat loomed ominously above. I clutched my phone as if it were a talisman against the encroaching storm, knowing that as our court date loomed, every revelation and every act of defiance would further ignite the stakes of our battle. In that agonizing, breathless moment, I understood that the coming days would not only test my resolve and the solidarity of our community, but would also force a confrontation that would forever redefine our lives. With the echo of Victor's menacing words reverberating in my ears, I braced myself for the inevitable clash, acutely aware that this final move, a desperate act of arrogance born of defeat, was the next step in a dangerous dance of retribution. And so, as I stood alone amidst the fading glow of the event and the distant murmur of supportive voices, I knew our story was far from over. The threat had been issued, and with it, the promise of a climax that would soon determine the fate of our family, our community, and the truth that now stood boldly revealed for all to see. The courtroom's wooden benches creaked under the weight of justice as I took my seat for the final showdown. The air was thick with anticipation, and every eye in the room was fixed on the proceedings. I could feel the steady hum of the community's support in the murmurs around me, a reminder that I was not alone in pursuing the truth. Today, everything would come to light. Victor sat at the defendant's table with a haggard look that betrayed the arrogance he had once worn so confidently. His eyes, wounded with anger and desperation, darted across the room between Mr. Jefferson, who exuded an air of calm authority, and the empty space where Elise should have been. It was as if even his loyal mistress had deserted him in favor of avoiding the inevitable consequences. My heart pounded as the judge called the court to order, and for a moment, the past, the stinging humiliation at Lila's graduation, the treacherous whispers, and the searing rejection of our family's foundation surged forth like a tidal wave. But I steadied myself, knowing that every piece of evidence we had amassed would now serve as the tools of our redemption. Victor's defense began with a last-ditch attempt to undermine my credibility. He took the stand, his testimony wavering between fabricated details and half-truths, as he tried to dismiss the meticulously gathered records of his financial deceit. He even attempted to introduce evidence that later turned out to be tampered with, an effort to muddy the clear waters of the truth. I sat there, my hands trembling slightly, but I refused to back down. Every falsehood he uttered was countered by the solid foundation of our records, bank statements, receipts, and digital correspondences that Mr. Jefferson had carefully compiled. The courtroom fell into a hush as Mr. Jefferson methodically exposed the discrepancies in Victor's testimony. When he presented the undeniable facts of the hidden bank account, the extravagant gifts purchased for Elise, and the documented meetings, even a few skeptical jurors couldn't help but lean forward in disbelief. A murmur ran through the courtroom, and I saw Victor's face begin to crumble. His confident facade faded into an expression of raw panic and subdued fury. I watched as his eyes filled with a mix of regret and defiance, but it was too late. Every lie had been stripped away, leaving only the harsh truth of his betrayal. The judge's gavel came down with a resonant finality. "The court finds in favor of the plaintiff," he announced, his voice firm and unyielding. In that moment, I saw Victor's face twist into a mask of disbelief and shame, his quiet protest unable to overcome the weight of our community's evidence and his own crumpled reputation. Outside the courtroom, the first glimmers of a hopeful future began to take shape. Lila's supportive presence at my side was more than a comfort. It was a declaration that our family, though marred by deceit, still possessed unbreakable strength. Later that day, I returned home to our modest but cherished house, where every room held memories of years spent in love, sacrifice, and hope. There, as I sat at my old wooden table with Lila, my fingers tracing the outlines of the envelope that had once been the symbol of our breaking point, I silently vowed that our lives were about to change for the better. The next chapter of our struggle emerged in the form of a new beginning, one that would repurpose our grief and betrayal into something beautiful. With the courtroom victory behind us, the community rallied around my long-held dream. Together with Margaret, Lila, and many neighbors, we embarked on a project to finally open the community art center I had once set aside for the sake of our family. The center was envisioned as a sanctuary for creativity and healing, a place where art would speak louder than any betrayal could. The transformation of our pain into a monument of resilience was not just a personal victory, it was a public celebration of truth and justice. On the day of the ribbon cutting, the art center bustled with activity. The building, an old but dignified structure in the heart of our small town, had been lovingly renovated to create a vibrant space alive with color and hope. The grand opening was held in a sun-dappled courtyard where murals painted by local artists, most of whom had been inspired by our public struggle against Victor's deception, adorned every available wall. Each mural told a story of despair turned into triumph, of broken trust reassembled into a mosaic of courage. I supervised the final touches on one of the largest murals, a sweeping depiction of a phoenix rising from the ashes with brilliant strokes of fire and gold. I could hardly contain the emotion swelling within me as I watched neighbors gather, their faces lit with determination and empathy. Lila stood nearby, her smile lighting up her face like the first rays of sunrise. "Mom," she said softly, "today is proof that from the ashes of his betrayal, we painted a future of courage and love." Her words, imbued with the raw purity of newfound freedom, echoed the sentiment I had long harbored deep inside. The community's support, which had been the backbone during the trial, now served as the foundation of our future. It was a reminder that even the darkest betrayal could be overcome and transformed into something beautiful. As the festivities continued, I couldn't shake a lingering tension, a final, desperate reminder from Victor. My phone vibrated, and I glanced at the screen to see an incoming message. My heart sank as I read his words. "You have made a grave mistake. Prepare for what comes next." The chilling threat hovered over me like a dark cloud, a stark contrast to the hope that filled the air around the art center. I paused, my breath catching in my throat. Was this his last attempt at control, his final act of desperation before disappearing entirely into the shadows of his own making? The message spurred me into action, and I immediately contacted Mr. Jefferson to confirm that all necessary protective measures were in place. I reassured Lila and Margaret that we had done everything possible to safeguard our future. Yet, the threat served as a reminder that the battle for truth and justice was a continuous one. In the days that followed, the fallout of the trial slowly receded, replaced by a tangible sense of renewal. Victor's isolation became increasingly apparent as his supporters, once loyal but now disillusioned by his crimes, began to abandon him one by one. Elise, whose complicity in the deceit had come to light, distanced herself visibly during community gatherings, her once smooth veneer marred by public shame. The consequences of his actions rippled through his world until he was left a solitary figure in the ruin of his own making. Meanwhile, our community art center became a beacon of healing and transformation, its doors open to anyone seeking solace or expression through the arts. On the centennial anniversary of our town, beneath a sky painted with hopeful hues, I stood before the gathered crowd at the ribbon-cutting ceremony of our art center. The air was filled with a soft hum of joyful anticipation and the gentle murmur of renewed dreams. As I cut the ceremonial ribbon, the center erupted in applause. Every clap, every tear-shared glance spoke of a collective journey from betrayal to redemption. The mural behind me, portraying every storm we had weathered, served as a testament to the strength that comes from facing one's truth. I turned to Lila, and together we shared a brief, unspoken moment of victory, knowing that our lives had been irrevocably changed for the better. In that shining moment, I understood that while Victor's actions had once threatened to dismantle everything I held dear, they had also ignited a courage I never knew existed. From the ashes of his betrayal, we painted a future of courage and love. I whispered to myself, the words sealing our promise to move forward. Our past would forever be a part of us, a reminder of the pain that forged our resilience, but it would no longer determine our future. As the celebrations wound down and the first hints of dawn crept across a hopeful skyline, I stood outside the new art center with Lila and a small group of our most dedicated supporters. In the crisp morning light, the center shone like a beacon for all who had suffered in silence, proof that even the deepest wounds could be transformed into sources of light. I felt an overwhelming sense of peace as I took in the scene, a promise of fresh beginnings that only those who have known great loss can appreciate. In the quiet aftermath of our hard-won victory, I knew our struggle had only deepened my love for life and for those who had stayed by my side. Victor's final threat now seemed to vanish in the brilliance of our new dawn. Our family and community would continue on this path, ever vigilant, ever inspired to create beauty from hardship. If this tale of resilience and redemption moved you, subscribe for more inspiring stories.